you talk a lot about expectations and the role that they play in sex. Expectation and pressure make sex worse. That's a quote from your new book, Chapter 3. I know maybe that's not a quote, but that's basically the gist of what it said. But it's also the gist of my experience. I think it's always felt to me like the opposite of great sex is expectation and like rigidity.
Yes.
And great sex for me is sometimes spontaneous, but it's carefree.
Yes.
And it's worry-free.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, pressure is a total passion killer.
But pressure, it's like, that's again the kind of compounding paradox, because the more there's a problem with our sex, the more it becomes a focal point in our relationship, the more pressure, the more expectation. Every night you go to bed, you're thinking, I've had moments in past lives and past relationships where, because the sex wasn't great, I would feel nervous going to bed because it was going to be one of those moments where we kind of both are sat there thinking about it, but we're not saying anything to each other. And then if I fall asleep, I'm going to disappoint them. But if I try, it's going to go badly. So what the hell do I do?
Yes, pressure is not good for our sex lives. And one of the challenges with pressure is that when you think about initiation, it's often very much bound up in pressure. And perhaps we'll talk about initiation in a second. But actually, the foundation of those problems with expectation and pressure is not being able to talk about it. Because if you think about it, what we really want to say is, I'm feeling quite stressed about the sex situation. And the fact that we don't talk about it means that those things are hanging between us. And we know with sex that one of the fascinating things about it is, like other ways in which we learn about sex by what we witness in the media and what we pick up from social learning, something psychologists call social learning theory. When it comes to sex, we don't witness how anyone else is doing it, really. We only see what happens on TV and what happens in porn, and maybe hear from our friends, but we don't really know if they're telling the truth or not. So what that means is
My guy friends all lie about it.
Yeah, everyone does.
They're all stallions in that. No, I'm joking. They're all very honest.
There's actually a fascinating sex research fact, which is one of my favorite facts, which is that men, when they say the number of sexual partners that they've had, are more likely to round it up to a 0 or a 5, a number ending in 0 or 5. I think that's a great sex fact. So what that means then is that we're all living our sex lives based on something we call sexual script theory. This is a concept that organically came out of the work of some sex researchers in the 70s called Gagnon and Simon. And they discovered that actually, in the absence of talking about sex, we all have quite set ideas about what our sex lives should look like. And we've picked this up from the media, from how people talk about sex in popular culture, in how we've used language. What this means is that we have a set of ideas, and this includes things like penis and vagina is the main course of sex, and everything else isn't really sex. And language backs that up, doesn't it? With the use of the word foreplay, kind of relegating any other type of sex to less than, and the use of the word virginity, which we only really use to refer to penis and vagina sex. So all of these things tell us, well, that's what real sex is. And then you hear people talking about that and backing that up with things like, well, we did everything but, which is like, we didn't have sex, but you did have sex because you were sexual together. So what happens with these sexual scripts is that they benefit us to some degree because they reduce our anxiety. That's what sexual scripts are there for, to give us some idea of what's expected. But what they do to us in the absence of communication is they give us an idea about what we should be doing or what someone else wants to do without us having to talk about it, which often means that problems arise.